talk about right now, obviously a lot of people are in some dire situations with their mortgage, other payments as well. We're going to deal with just strictly mortgages with you here today. And I know that the big banks came out last week and said that people can start deferring mortgage payments for up to 6 months. Walk us through the process of what that really means by deferring your mortgage for either a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and what it means on the back end.
Well, I think one of the things people have to be aware of, and this is funny because this question came up way more than I thought it would. The first thing to clarify with the deferrals and that kind of thing, with any mortgage relief, the government is not going to take over and pay your mortgage payments. I don't know where that misperception came from or misconception came from, but it seemed to be one of the number one things that we got was, well, when's the government going to take over my payments? That's not what's happening. So the big six banks came forward and said, we're going to start a deferral program, offer people some relief who have lost their income short term, you've been laid off, whatever the case may be. If there's any kind of hardship, we're going to work with our customers to try and see if we can provide some relief. The initial broad strokes of that had people thinking, okay, great, I got no mortgage payments for 6 months. We'll just kind of pick it up as we go. One of the things you have to remember is that when you defer the payments and move your payments, however the bank's going to structure it, or your lender, because to be honest, there is no blanket statement. Some of them are structuring it in different ways than others. The interest clock keeps ticking. So what's going to happen is that, say you have to skip 4 to 6 months worth of payments, and let's say on the average $400,000 mortgage, maybe you're paying $450 a month in interest payments. Well, over that 6 months, that $450 is going to keep amortizing. And what will happen is that, depending on your lender, they'll either work it in on the back end, they'll re-amortize the loan, and you may see an increase in the loan working up. The best idea is to call your lender, but please know there's no relief from that. Like when the interests are being deferred, that's exactly what's happening. They're being deferred. It's not a forgiveness. And depending on your situation, there may or may not be an advantage to doing a deferral. If you can stick it out and get through, you may save yourself thousands of dollars in the long term, because long term it is going to cost you. And what's going to happen is that as those deferral payments get pushed back, well, now you're paying interest on top of interest, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes complete and utter sense.
And I think the other thing the lenders were talking about too, especially the big banks, the volume that they're seeing right now from people is overwhelming. One of our top lender partners, I spoke to our business development manager the other day, they had 1,000 voicemails by 10 a.m. So if you are not in a situation where you require a deferral, if you're not in an emergency situation, the lender partners and the banks are asking you, please hold off on calling, because you're taking up a line for someone that needs it.
Yeah, so I guess that is the biggest. We've seen a great amount of calls on all levels, dealing with unemployment, and now we're seeing that. Is that the biggest piece of advice right now that you can give, and your company could give right now, is that if you're getting a steady paycheck, toe the line and do the best you can right now before you have to make that decision to defer mortgage payments?
Well, I think to that point, Mark, there's a ton of uncertainty with everybody, because unless you're in a fixed income sort of government position, if you're in the private sector, there's still a lot of volatility and concern. People are nervous, right? If you're self-employed, a lot of that business is dried up for a lot of people. If you work in the hospitality industry, that's dried up. So there is a lot of uncertainty. And I think when there's uncertainty, people they start to panic. They're not sure. It's our human nature to get nervous when we don't know what's going to happen next. And I think the big thing is to sit back, control your emotions in your decision-making. Don't let your emotions dictate your decision-making. Let logic decide that. And what I mean by that is, sit down and look at your financial situation, look at your numbers, look at your bills coming in, look at your income. Is it going to be steady? If there's no immediate panic, then don't panic. You're in a great position. You can move forward. If you find that you do that exercise and there's a shortfall, then you can start making some calls to find relief. Because with a lot of lender partners, they're looking at offering some relief in terms of credit cards and line of credit and that kind of thing, your auto loans, that kind of thing. You can call all of your lenders and see what they have available. And what I've been telling my clients and friends is that you don't know and you won't get what you don't ask for. Right. So if you're unsure, make the call. Just know that if you're calling a lender or a bank right now, the lineups, you're going to be on the phone a long time I've talked to a couple clients who've waited sometimes 3 and 4 hours now, and the phone call was 7 minutes, and they got their deferral. The process, once you get through, the process is great, but be patient, and please don't take it out on the people on the other end of the phone when you're frustrated. They have nothing to do with it, and they're swamped, overwhelmed.
So obviously houses are still being sold, houses are still being bought. What is the market currently like for mortgage lending?
Right now, I will say because of the uncertainty, there has been some slowdown in business. On the purchase side, I know some of my real estate friends have sort of locked down and reduced their day-to-day activity because of the social distancing. They've implemented stuff in their business so that they can do things remotely. You can do things through video showings and stuff like that. Where we've seen a shift on the mortgage side of things is in the refinancing world. And this is people calling about questions about refinancing their mortgage because they need cash flow short term. They could be in a situation where they're self-employed or the income's been cut off or the EI benefits aren't cutting it. What's going to happen? One of the great things about the EI benefits is some lenders are now accepting EI as an income source, whereas traditionally they normally wouldn't. So in that situation, we're finding with refinances, people are looking to see if they can take some equity out of their home to put together a cash nest egg, and provide a bit of financial relief short term for that way. One of the things, if you're going to do refinancing, and I say call a mortgage agent or a mortgage professional. Lenders have a vested interest in you doing this kind of thing, so beware that they're looking at it through the lens of, okay, how is this going to work for business from us? A mortgage agent or a broker that's independent looks at your situation and tries to match you up with the questions and answers that best suit you. So just as a caution to people, beware of that too. And so in the refinance world, the other big thing I tell customers and clients is check your penalties. Because if you're in the middle of a mortgage term and you want to renew, penalties could be substantial depending on your lender and depending on how they calculate it. Ask your lender directly how they calculate that and what the penalty would be, because penalty may not be worth the refinance.
And finally, Joel, for the last question to you is one piece of advice or a couple of pieces of advice that you could give to people right now?
Be patient, um, be logical, fight the urge we're surrounded by this tsunami of online emotion from people that are, and rightfully so, there's a lot of anxiety and nervousness and a lot of misinformation out there. Check your sources when you're looking at things. Make sure you verify who you're talking to when it comes to anything that you're trying to find information about. It could be benefits, it could be mortgage information, it could be health information. Check your sources. Be patient, and I think the other big thing is just be kind to each other. We're in unprecedented times. This has never happened before. There is no roadmap. Our politicians and leadership and anybody that's in a leadership position, they're winging this as they go. And I think just show some kindness to people, because at the end of this, when we come out of this, when we get out of it, I think we're going to be facing a different world. And right now, creating more stress and more anxiety doesn't help anybody.